So, did Larry Fink, BlackRock's CEO, just expose the truth surrounding the recent Bitcoin price crash? In a new interview that just dropped recently, he made three very interesting points about who is buying Bitcoin, who is buying this Bitcoin dip, and why it happened. You guys are going to want to stay tuned because this is breaking effing news, ladies and gentlemen. And let's take a look at what Larry Fink, the CEO of the largest asset manager in the world, BlackRock, had to say about who's buying Bitcoin these days.
We're seeing more and more legitimate long-only investors investing in it. There was an article about a foundation, endowment just bought a lot of IBIT. But I can tell you there are a number of sovereign funds that are standing by. They're adding incrementally at 120, at 100. I know they bought more in the 80s. Right. That's fine. And they're establishing a longer position. And you own it over years. This is not a trade. You own it for a purpose.
So there he is with the CEO of the largest crypto exchange, Brian Armstrong, sitting right next to him. And he's getting interviewed. And he's basically saying, like, look, Bitcoin is being bought by... Did I hear that correctly, Opti, or am I just imagining stuff?
Yeah, multiple sovereign wealth funds.
Multiple sovereign wealth funds are buying Bitcoin. Now, we know a couple of them by name. My prediction is I think it's just a matter of time before the United States of America, especially with the Trump administration, announces that it is establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. We'll get to more of that during the news segment because the Bitcoin senator dropped a huge hint. But before we get to all of that, I do want to play this clip by Larry Fink as well.
Bitcoin is an asset of fear. And when you're less fearful, like we had a trade agreement with China, you saw a shift downward. There is conversations this week that there may be some type of settlement in Ukraine. Bitcoin fell a little bit. So you own Bitcoin because you're frightened of your physical security. You own it because you're frightened of your financial security. The long-term fundamental reason you own it because of the debasement of financial assets because of deficits. And so to me, even the movement in the last week, and we've had about a 20-25% drawdown, and this is the third time since IBIT was created, our ETF. And so this is, you see these shifts, and they're actually pretty non-correlated shifts, and so the role...
But then some people say, is that really insurance, right? If you had bought it at $125,000 and it's now sitting at $90-some-odd thousand, you're saying to yourself...
If you bought it for a trade, you know, it's a very volatile asset. You're going to have to be really good at market timing, which most people aren't. If you're buying it as a hedge against all your hope, you know, then it has a meaningful impact on a portfolio. The other big problem of Bitcoin is it's still heavily influenced by leveraged players.
So Opti, I mean, a lot of confirmations to a lot of some thesis, a lot of theories that we had here at Simply Bitcoin.
I'm vindicated.
Could you break down what Larry Fink just said?
All right. Well, first of all, you know, let's start with the first news, or the first clip rather, which is something I've been kind of saying on the show. I've actually been kind of saying this on a hunch the last couple of weeks, which is why I'm not convinced that we're going to have a huge 70-80% drawdown in a bear market. To me, if we're looking at the Bitcoin price, if you're looking at yearly candles, 2025 was the bear market. And like Nico's been saying for a while, since we didn't really get a blow off top, we probably won't be seeing, you know, a huge steep decline in a bear market. Now, what I heard from that second Larry Fink clip, the first part, I kind of fundamentally disagree. I look at Bitcoin more as like hope. You know, Bitcoin is hope. Remember, go to hope.com. Like, Bitcoin isn't just an asset that you hold because you're afraid. It's also one that you hold because you think the future will be better. If you understand what's going on in the traditional financial world, you understand how fiat money works. That is really the asset of fear. Like the traditional fiat money, what do you always say, Nico? fiat is the money of war. I forget what you always say.
Fiat is the money of nihilism,
Yes,
despair,
that's it.
poverty, destruction, and then Bitcoin is the money of hope. Now, it's really interesting to kind of add to your point, Opti, how Larry Fink is echoing that same, those same talking points, which I find quite interesting.
Yeah, and then further, I didn't actually bring up the third clip, but Larry Fink also in this speech at, it's like the DealBook Summit, it's Andrew Sorkin's kind of Andrew Ross Sorkin's. It's a conference or whatever. Brings in all the influencers. He also tripled down on the fact that he was wrong about Bitcoin. It's actually kind of a funny clip because Andrew Ross Sorkin was like, "Yeah, I mean, Larry, you were saying a few years ago that Bitcoin is what was it, an index of money lender or money launderers," and Larry Fink saw me, he's like, "Yeah, and thieves." And thieves. And I was like, yo, that's actually kind of hilarious. So, you know, Larry Fink's been saying, look, that was a very public mistake, or rather, you know, he was wrong, very publicly wrong about Bitcoin. And now what we're seeing is, as 2025 has progressed, we've all been wondering, like, who is actually buying this Bitcoin? Remember, I've been covering on the show for you guys all year long the amount of coin that's been hitting the exchange. And you look at all the coins, it's over hundreds of thousands of coins that hit the exchange. And it makes you wonder, okay, we've been above 100K for a very long time. You know, the timing is a little coincidental that once JP Morgan launches a Bitcoin product, once Vanguard comes into Bitcoin, those are literally the days that they're like the absolute bottoms of those little trading kind of epochs. Like, they're basically buying bottoms right now. You know, they launch a product, it comes out, and Bitcoin bottoms out. It makes you really wonder what is going on in the market. How are they able to kind of crash the price right when they launch these new products? You're like, there is some shenanigans going on. And if you listen very closely to the very end of that clip, I think this is where I've been saying for a while, it's been a hunch of mine that what we're seeing in the markets is they are trying to clear leverage. I covered it yesterday on yesterday's show, or was it? Yeah, it was on yesterday's show. And Larry Fink came out today and said, well, it was really after the show. I don't think he's listening. I think he's just kind of exposing the playbook here. He said, look, currently, the Bitcoin market is being run by leverage players. And what have they been doing? They've been like a seeking missile trying to deleverage the market. They're trying to liquidate all these leverage traders. And Larry Fink literally just said the exact same thing. He's like, he didn't actually come out and be like, yeah, we're seeking the leverage here. Like, we want to seek the leverage. But if you understand how markets work, you understand that this is what they're going to do. Again, look, the starting point for all of these institutions in 2025 is essentially 100K. This is their starting point. This is like their initial, you know, this is the initial jump in point for them, 100K. This is when they basically got all the signals to go into the market. So obviously they want to get a good little discount on it. So what do? They try to liquidate all the leverage in the market. And Larry Fink literally just said that. He's like, look, the problem with the Bitcoin market currently is it's still being run by all these leverage players. Depending on how you read that, one part is like, okay, they're going to seek all the leverage in the market. Hence why I keep telling you there's a few things you should be watching. One, of course, the ETF inflows and outflows, and then the leverage kind of points in the market where you're seeing a lot of longs and a lot of shorts, because they want to clear all that leverage. And once all that leverage is cleared, once everyone is liquidated, once all the traders are absolutely wrecked, they have their products in place and they're going to rip it. Hence why I keep saying I don't think this is a bear market like in the past. I fundamentally believe since the ETF was launched, it shifted everything in Bitcoin. Look, one thing we know for sure, retail is nowhere to be found. The only people that have been in Bitcoin for the last year, maybe even two, are just Bitcoiners. And then the only people that are really trading these is like a very small percentage of people on the fringe that are trading, while I would argue, you know, a small minority are playing the accumulation game. But if you see what they're saying, they're launching Bitcoin products. They're accumulating Bitcoin. There seems to be this unlimited bid by Wall Street where they're playing like a very subtle game of acquiring Bitcoin. And Larry Fink literally said that exact same thing. He said, look, they're in this market for the long term. They're not buying into Bitcoin as a, short-term trade. He knows it's super volatile. They are trying to build a position, as Larry Fink said, over years so that can play the long game here. This is what's happening, guys. I've been telling you guys this as a hunch. I've been like, I think this is what's going on. And then I see Larry Fink come out and say literally the exact same thing I've been saying. And he's got a lot more insights into who's actually buying, what's going on behind the scenes, what these new Wall Street products are going to be. And he literally said the same thing, like, we're building long-term positions. There used to be an old meme. It's like, you play long-term games with long-term assets or something like that. I'm butchering the meme, but that's exactly what he said. And then he basically gave you guys the playbook. The market is being run by leveraged players. So where should you be looking? The ETF inflows and outflows, and then what's going on in the leverage markets, which means like a seeking, destroying missile here. They're heat-seeking. Yeah, there you go. Heat-seeking missile here. They are going after the leverage traders. And we literally saw this play out a few days ago. So like, this is the game, guys. If there's sovereign wealth funds, if these institutions are just launching these new products, if Wall Street is finally able to get into Bitcoin, they want to get a good discount. They're accumulating a position over time. So they're not really impatient about buying today all at once. They're essentially doing like a DCA strategy here. And they're trying to whipsaw the market by getting all the traders wrecked. It's literally playing out exactly as I've been telling you guys. Now, I'm not, I'm kind of trolling a little bit about me being vindicated a little bit, because really, who knows what's going on. This could be Larry Fink kind of giving a head fake to the market, but I heard him say exactly what I've been telling you guys.
I will say this, right? We have to pull up this post by Bitcoin legend Adam Back, mentioned in the Satoshi white paper. The Bitcoin white paper, HODL, don't sell your Bitcoin to sovereign wealth funds, which is actually what me and Opti have been literally repeating ourselves throughout this entire year. We've been telling you guys that if you're selling your Bitcoin right now, you're probably selling it to BlackRock. Like, what is this but not a complete, utter confirmation and vindication of what we've been saying? I completely agree with you. And when Walker came on the show the other day, I think that this year was all about shaking retail out of their bags, out of their HODL, right? They're trying to bore you to death. They're trying to scare you with the FUD. The Tether FUD was coming in. All this FUD was coming in. And again, it's to create uncertainty. And with that uncertainty, you have a lot of people that are just saying, you know what? Bitcoin is boring. We're experiencing this ourselves. Like, we're basically saying, and this is Andrew Sorkin asked them, like, look, the reality is that if you bought Bitcoin in the beginning of the year, the S&P outperformed you. Gold has outperformed you, right? But I think that's just it's just a matter of time. I always use the beach ball analogy. You could put a beach ball underwater for so long, but after a while, that pressure is just going to explode upwards. And that's exactly what I think is going to happen to Bitcoin sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and Nico, just to add a little bit to that, like, Larry Fink literally said exactly that without actually saying it. It's like, we're trying to shake you out of the market. Like, as I was saying it this morning, you got to think of the Wall Street. We all know the man. I'm blanking on the classic movie with. Anyways, I forget the movie, but it's the one where, greed is good. Like, if you kind of look at Wall Street with this kind of angle that, like, yes, this is capitalism at its finest. This is greed at its, most productive. They're coming into this space and they're looking at Bitcoiners. They're looking at this really tiny pond, and they're a huge fish coming into this. So you don't think they're out there basically being like, dude, we're going to come into this little tiny market right now, and we are going to cook everyone because they don't understand what we're doing. They think they're the big players here, but like the real sharks just got into the water right now. I think this is exactly what's been playing out all year. Obviously, I've been kind of wrong all year. I've been stupidly bullish all year long, but I think as the year progressed, directionally, I'm starting to get more and more on point. I'm starting to see the game being played, and it really just makes me think like this is exactly what's going on. They're trying to shake you out of your position. They're trying to launch products basically so that they get good starting points. They're trying to, you know, destroy all the leverage in the market, because really, in reality, when you think about it, it's like it's a new kid on the block. And it's not just like a new kid on the block. It's like, you know, the really powerful guy in suits just came on the block, and he's looking at all the kids and he's like, I am going to strong arm them, and I want to be the one that is able to pile on the leverage.
I'm going to shake them out of their Bitcoin. Like it's as simple as that. Like Opti is 100% spot on, like a heat-seeking missile.
We got him, boys. We got him.
Like a heat-seeking missile acquiring its target. Yes, I 100% agree. I mean, look, we've been vindicated a lot throughout this year. You know, sometimes I have pie on my face, sometimes Opti has pie on his face, but between the two of us, we've been pretty accurate in speculating and basically coming up with theories as to why what has been happening in the background during this historic year in Bitcoin. Because the reality is that we've had one of the best years from a regulatory perspective, from an adoption perspective, from the TradFi perspective, but from a price action perspective, it doesn't seem to match all of the bullish news. And we could not make sense of it throughout the year, but after a while, it started to get revealed to us. More and more information started to come out that the fact is that, look, here's the blunt truth, ladies and gentlemen, that you can't handle the truth. The truth is that Wall Street is trying to shake you out of your bags. That's what I fundamentally believe. Adam Back is saying that. I mean, Larry Fink, in an indirect way, he's saying that as well, right? So, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I'm going to stick to what I've been saying throughout this entire year since January. If you're selling Bitcoin right now, you're selling it to a sovereign wealth fund, or you're selling it to BlackRock. Like, don't put yourself in that position. Don't put your family in that position. Don't get bored out of your bags, because essentially that's exactly what they're trying to do. Someone in the chat, Nico and Opti giving you tomorrow's news today. Yes, we've been telling you guys that. Tune into Simply Bitcoin, tomorrow's Bitcoin news today. We've been spot on. We've been doing this for like half a decade at this point, and we've been pretty accurate with the things that we've been saying. And I think what it comes down to is just simple game theory. Like, I don't think any of this is rocket science. Anyways, guys, we have a hell of a show lined up for you guys today. We have the executive chairman of Hive Digital Technologies, Frank Holmes, joining us later on today's show. They're going to be releasing a short film later today. We have a special. We have a 1 minute little tidbit of that short film. It's super high production. It's incredible. It shows their mining operations in Paraguay. It's super cool. Looking forward to that conversation. We also got news. We got numbers for you guys. It's going to be an incredible show. So sit back, relax, grab some popcorn, grab whatever it is that you like to, your favorite beverage, and sit back and relax and, enjoy the ride while, Opti and I will guide you through this Bitcoin roller coaster. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into it, I do want to give a very special shout out to our lead sponsor, BitcoinWell.com. The reason we love BitcoinWell.com here at Simply Bitcoin is its automatic self-custody. As soon as you buy Bitcoin on BitcoinWell, as soon as the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. They don't even leave the Bitcoin on the exchange, which perfectly aligns with our ethos of the separation of money and state. If you're a higher net worth individual looking to buy $50,000 worth of Bitcoin or more, you have to check out Bitcoin Well Infinite. This is tailored for high net worth individuals. Trust, family offices, and organizations. You will have a dedicated account representative that will walk you through A to Z of buying Bitcoin and taking it into self-custody. Go to bitcoinwell.com/OTC to get started. All right, everybody, it's going to be an incredible show. We're going to be right back in just a bit. I want to give a shout out to our partner, Hive Digital Technology. Why Hive in 2025? Unstoppable growth. As the first ever public miner, Hive's position to quadruple their global footprint, making them one of the world's fastest growing miners in 2025. And with elite operations that consistently top the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash, Hive's now headquartered in the USA. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable Bitcoin mining. You can catch the latest buzz at Hive Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com. I want to give a shout out to our partner, bitcoinben.io. If you're into freedom, Bitcoin, and building a real community, this is for you. Gain exclusive access to real-world, members-only, private clubs across the globe, featuring poker nights, expert-led classes, co-working spaces, educational meetups, live events, and more. Current locations include Sarasota, Nashville, Boston, Dallas, Las Vegas, and St. Louis, with new clubs launching soon in West Palm Beach, Scottsdale, Alabama, and beyond. Not to mention Bitcoin Ben's resorts in El Salvador. There's 3 of them, and they're absolutely beautiful. You'll also get access to the first fully backed Bitcoin bank with fiat ramps and savings accounts. It's called Private Key Bank. And you guessed it, it's based out of El Salvador. Go peer-to-peer with Bitcoin bulk buys. Tap into home equity for long-term Bitcoin growth. And join their exclusive mining pools if you're interested in mining. What are you waiting for? Head over to bitcoinben.io. Join today, where Bitcoin meets freedom. All right, everybody, we are back. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $92,290. Block height, 926,433. Market cap, 1.84 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 6.16%. And the decline from all-time high, if you're buying Bitcoin right now, you're getting it at a 26.9% discount. So get those cheap sats while you can. Anyways, what I want to talk about today during the numbers segment is, ladies and gentlemen, next year, Too Late Powell, or I don't know what Trump's nickname for him is, Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, his term is ending. And Trump is going to be appointing someone new. And apparently, this is very Trump. Trump says the quiet part out loud. I'll let you guys hear it.
It's a great group, and I guess a potential Fed chair is here too. I don't know. Are we allowed to say that? Potential. He's a respected person, that I can tell you. Thank you, Kevin.
Trump is hilarious. Potential. Am I allowed to say that? Well, can we say that? And it's gotten the established community up in arms. They're like, oh my God, like, end of the world, et cetera, et cetera. So who is this guy? So this is Kevin Hassett. That's who Trump was referring to. He's an American economist who has been the director of the National Economic Council since 2025. He was a senior advisor and chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors from 2017 to 2019. But none of that really matters to us Bitcoiners. What really matters to us Bitcoiners is that, from my sources, he was actually an advisor to Coinbase, which
your sources love that. Go.
From Opti's making me crack up. So, now you're making me doubt myself.
No, he was.
So he was an advisor.
No, he totally was. I'm just kind of trolling you.
Now I have to double check. Yes. So he was. So he was an advisor to Coinbase. Opti's just making me doubt myself.
I just thought it was funny. My sources.
And dude, I have to hedge myself a little bit. Sometimes
he was.
Sometimes the information you get on Twitter, you don't know. So
Yeah,
that's why I said it the way I said
my
it.
sources.
But anyways, So the next, just to give you guys give you guys a lay of the land, the next head of the Federal Reserve was an advisor to the largest crypto and Bitcoin exchange in the United States of America. All right. How could you not be bullish? Obviously, Trump wants to appoint this man because he wants his agenda passed. And right now, he believes, and we've been covering this throughout the year, Caitlin Long believes this as well. Senator Lummis believes this as well. Jerome Powell has been he hasn't been lowering rates fast enough. He's been getting in front of Trump's agenda. He hasn't been facilitating Trump's agenda with his monetary policy. Now, he'll say it's because, excuse A, B, and C, but, I believe it's for different reasons. I believe it's politically motivated, but that's a whole other rabbit hole. Anyways, so it's not just, the political establishment that's kind of reacting bad to this as well. Also, check out this post by Walter Bloomberg. And he says, bond investors warn Treasury over Hassett as Fed chair. I always say the flak is heaviest over the target, right? The moment that any Trump appointee or potential appointee gets picked, you always see the legacy media lose their minds, and they basically say, no, this guy's dangerous. This guy's would be bad for the economy, et cetera, et cetera. You heard that. You heard that with RFK Jr. You heard that with Pete Hegseth. You heard that with, again, all of Trump's cabinet appointees. You always heard this FUD right beforehand, right? Pam Bondi as well. Anyways, bond investors have told the U.S. Treasury they're worried that Kevin Hassett, if appointed Federal Reserve Chair in 2026, would cut interest rates too aggressively to please President Trump. During November consultations with major bank asset managers and the Treasury Borrowing Advisory Committee, several market participants said they preferred more independent candidates such as Rick Ryder or Fed Governor Christopher Waller. Investors also expressed doubts about Hassett's ability to lead a divided Fed board. Economist Claudia Schma, I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, noted his success would depend on which Kevin Hassett shows up, while fund manager John Stopford said markets already view him as a Trump stooge, risking lasting damage to the Fed Reserve's credibility. I don't accept that framing. And the reason I don't accept that framing is I don't think that the Fed has inherently been acting as independently as they claim they've been acting. There's been there's been investigation by Senator Lummis with the Senate Banking Committee. There's Caitlin Long, who's currently in a lawsuit with them regarding Custodia Bank. I don't think the Federal Reserve acted independently, and I don't think the Federal Reserve acted in a neutral fashion. So this framing that, hey, the Federal Reserve, is neutral, and this appointee by Trump is actually jeopardizing the neutrality of the Federal Reserve. I'm sorry, I don't accept that framing, and I think that Trump might be over the target because of how they are reacting to it. Now, bond investors are panicking about Kevin Hassett is actually great news for Bitcoin. Their fears tells you that the fiat system is getting shaky. They say Hassett might cut rates to please Trump, which translates to he won't run the Fed the way Wall Street wants. And that means more money printing, more debt relief, and a weaker dollar. And whenever the dollar looks weaker or more politically controlled, people look for a neutral alternative, and that's Bitcoin. They warned he might hurt the Fed's credibility. Translation: if the Fed looks political, the whole idea of a trustworthy central bank falls apart. But again, I don't accept that. I don't accept that framing. The idea that they've been acting independently and not politically, I don't accept it. That's my opinion. I could be wrong here. But anyways, they prefer established names like Waller or Ryder, the safe picks that keeps the fiat machine predictable, but Bitcoin thrives when that machine gets unpredictable. Anyways, here's the takeaway. When Wall Street loses confidence in the Fed, Bitcoin becomes a safe haven. So their fear of Hassett is basically a bullish signal for BTC. That's my assessment of the situation. Again, seeing the legacy media respond the way they respond tells me that, might not be the best. And again, this guy is not a full believer in Keynesian economics, right? If you look into his background, he's not a full believer in, the Federal Reserve System itself. Now, he obviously believes in central banking, but again, it's a step in the right direction. It's moving the Overton window. And I keep telling you guys about how important that is. Opti, your thoughts on this gentleman?
Yeah, well, obviously, it would be kind of interesting. Well, first of all, he was at Coinbase, but so caveat this statement here, but it would be pretty interesting if a Bitcoiner is the new Fed chair, like a Bitcoiner at the head of the Fed. Obviously, Bitcoiners have been wanting to end the Fed, but at least a good stepping stone might be a Bitcoiner at the head of the Fed. Though it is going to be pretty interesting because I think Nico really hit the nail on the head. Again, if all of the regional banks and all of the bond investors and essentially the people that like the status quo right now are saying that this is going to be a bad pick because he's going to basically cave to all of Trump's demands, it really shows you kind of what the, Fed hierarchy believes should be done right now. Obviously, they don't want to cut too much Fed rates right now because they think it's probably going to explode the system. So they're trying to be a little more conservative. Obviously, we know what Trump's been wanting to do. He's like, bro, free money back on the table, cut rates. I want liquidity back into the system because the economy's cooked. And so it is a very interesting fight we're seeing right now because if Trump does get this Hassett guy and Kevin Hassett, former Coinbase advisor, I think it's pretty safe to say that there won't be any more quote unquote independence between the Fed. And that has been the main fight we've been seeing all year. Scott Bessent's been out here saying very publicly that he doesn't really believe in the independence of the Fed.
Dude, he's trolling. He says, "Oh, Trump, I think is going to be a great chairman." Like, he goes on TV and he says that, like, in a trolling fashion.
Yeah, and what's very interesting is we basically, have had this myth of an independent Fed chair or head of the Fed for, what's the math? About 50 years since Nixon. So if they are able to get this guy in, of course, Trump can nominate him. And it seems like this is like the leading new Fed chair nomination, but they do have to get it approved. Now, it's going to be very interesting to see if they do get him approved and if they are able to strong arm that process. It's going to go back to essentially the Treasury is in control right now. And all of this political kind of war we've been seeing from Jerome Powell kind of fighting Trump on a lot of stuff and fighting the presidential kind of agenda. We're going to see something completely different. And they've been very vocal about what they want. They want low interest rates. They want liquidity back on the table. And so if they get this guy in, of course, Powell's out basically in April. A lot of rumors saying he's going to resign. I'm pretty sure he's probably going to stick out his kind of tenure until April. Okay, we're back. It's acting weird again. If they are able to get Kevin Hassett in there, they're telling you exactly what's going to happen. They're going to lower interest rates. The money printer is going to get turned on. Again, guys, Q2 just ended this week. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily mean that QE is coming back on the table, but you can just venture to guess that within a year, most likely QE is going to start up again. So, Nico was kind of trolling me at the beginning of the week saying that I was like, yeah, let's devastate the middle class. I'm like, no. What I'm telling you is that's what they're doing. That's what they want to do. They want to destroy the purchasing power of the dollar. They want low interest rates. They got to turn on the money printer. They have to run this really hot. This is literally what they have to do. They're telling you what they want to do. Now, the real kind of linchpin here is if they're able to get their guy in this position, then hopefully you are positioned in the right way, which to us is you need to be buying as much Bitcoin as possible. This now is not the time to be, selling Bitcoin because you think it's going to go lower. now's the time, if anything, maybe have some cash because there might be some really good buying opportunities, but you need to be doing what Larry Fink is saying these sovereign wealth funds are doing. They are building a long-term position. This is the game being played. They're literally telling us exactly what they want to do. Now, whether they can actually follow through is probably a different story, but you know what they want to do, where instead of being lost in all the signal, or sorry, in all the noise of what's going to happen, it's like, they're pretty much putting a billboard out there. It's like, this is what we want to do. And if we're able to make it happen, you've had time to position yourself. So I've been saying this is probably what's going to happen. I don't know if it's really going to happen. I don't know what the poly markets odds are right now, but they're climbing. So it's most likely going to happen.
It would be wild to have, again, an advisor of Coinbase to be heading the Federal Reserve. This is what I mean by grassroots movement. This is what I mean by this, again, it's not about like, it's just about having Bitcoiners. Like, what is government? Like, what's the definition of government? The government is a representation of the people, right? So what do? You get Bitcoiners in government, right? And then you get Bitcoiners in government, and obviously they're going to want pro-Bitcoin policy. And that's exactly what happened with the Trump administration. You have the Trump family that owns a lot of Bitcoin. You have RFK Jr. owns a lot of Bitcoin. Tulsi Gabbard owns a lot of Bitcoin. And now, look, a potential Federal Reserve chair. This is night and day compared to Powell. Powell is basically saying that Bitcoin isn't money. I know he walked it back a little bit and he said, look, it's kind of here to stay and all that. He walked it back a little bit, but it doesn't even come close to a former Coinbase advisor that owns like $1 million worth of Coinbase stock. I know he has to sell it before, but I think he has to sell it before to, again, potentially be nominated as the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Like, that's an absolute game changer.
Wait, I like this comment by Gulag. He says, Hassett is here to pump your asset. So let's go. Let's hope the memes stay true.
All right, everybody, we're going to be right back. We're going to hit the news. And then during the culture segment, ladies and gentlemen, we have Frank Holmes in the house. Frank Holmes is the executive chairman of Hive Digital Technologies. They're going to be premiering a short film covering their mining operations in Paraguay. And of course, we have a bunch of questions for Frank. Lots of breaking news. Again, this is the first Bitcoin miner to ever go public, Hive Digital Technologies. They've been crushing it on the NASDAQ. We're going to be right back in just a little bit.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin, the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans. Unlock the liquidity in your Bitcoin without having to sell your Bitcoin. They've issued $9 billion in loans to over 10,000 customers since 2018. I absolutely love these guys. Not only do I have an account with them, but I also have a loan. And what I love about them is that there are no monthly payments, and you could pay back the loan at any time. As soon as you send your Bitcoin as collateral, you'll have cash in your account within 24 hours. Over 1,000 five-star customer reviews, and they've never lost a single dollar or sat of customer money. Go to learn.ledin.io/simply today, and you'll get 0.25% off your first loan. I want to give a shout out to our partner, sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money. It's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones? They don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, BitKey. If you already self-custody your Bitcoin, you know the deal with hardware wallets by now. Complex setups, clumsy interfaces, and a seed phrase that can be lost, stolen, or forgotten. BitKey fixes that. BitKey is a multi-sig hardware wallet built by the team behind Square and Cash App. It packs a cryptographic recovery system and built-in inheritance feature into an intuitive, easy-to-use wallet with no seed phrase to sweat over. It's simple, secure, self-custody without the stress. Time named BitKey one of the best inventions of 2024. Get 20% off at bitkey.world. That's BITKEY.world with the code SIMPLY. All right, everybody, check out the BitKey. Go to bitkey.world today. Use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the Bit. I think it's like 20% off, actually. This is literally one of the easiest hardware wallets to use on the market. It has multi-sig built in. It has inheritance built in. It's built by our friends over at Square, Cash App, and Block. Again, incredibly intuitive, very easy to use. Go to bitkey.world today and use SIMPLY to get yourself a discount. All right, everybody, let's jump into today's news before our special guest arrives. Just going to start it off with this, kind of connecting with what we were saying in the beginning of the show. This meme has been making the rounds. You have U.S. Senator Cynthia Lummis hints at buying Bitcoin, quote, big things coming for Franklin. Franklin buys Bitcoin and finds financial freedom. Opti, what do you think she means by that?
Well, obviously, I'm speculating here, a huge speculation, but it sounds pretty obvious. You know, Franklin, I think, aka Ben Franklin, as in Washington, D.C., is going to buy Bitcoin soon. Big things coming. Now, I know Senator Lummis has been maybe overly bullish on how quickly this was going to happen, but it sounds like maybe there's some things going on behind the scenes. I mean, look, maybe I'm just so deep in the memes, deep in the weeds that it just connected to me. You know, Franklin buys Bitcoin. Why would a sitting senator say that if it wasn't about Washington, D.C. buying Bitcoin? Though you could say maybe Franklin Templeton, but that connection to me just doesn't make sense coming from Senator Lummis. I think she's pretty clearly saying in a Bitcoin meme fashion that Washington, D.C. is probably buying some Bitcoin, which, hey, from where? I don't know. I know we have a quote unquote new sovereign wealth fund. Does this mean a strategic Bitcoin reserve? You guys know me. I've been getting a little tired of the strategic Bitcoin reserve meme. I think I want something else. But if this happens, if they finally pack their bags, again, I can't see 2026 being a bear market. So it sounds like she said DC's buying Bitcoin.
I mean, yeah. And also too, just to kind of connect the dots, ladies and gentlemen. So here's the original post from her, right? Again, big things coming for Franklin. We've been speculating throughout this entire year. We've been saying, listen, I think the United States of America has been, I think that they have every intention of buying Bitcoin, but I don't think that they are going to tell you beforehand that they are buying Bitcoin. I think that would be very, very negative for their bags. Anyways, seems like our special guest is joining us very, very quickly, very, very soon. I meant to say. But check out this meme that we dropped from Simply Bitcoin. Franklin meets Morpheus, and again, it's referencing the Matrix meme, the Morpheus memes. But what was really interesting about this meme specifically is that Caitlin Long actually reposted that, right? She reposted this one.
She reposted our meme?
She reposted our meme, which again, kind of connecting the dots with what Senator Lummis is posting, which she posted another meme regarding Franklin buys Bitcoin and finds financial freedom. I don't know. Maybe we're seeing things that are not there, Opti. I don't know, man. It all points to that. So it all points to that. So I don't know. Want to get your take.
I mean, look, I've been waiting for this. I think we've seen a lot of these kind of announcements. Maybe I'm starting to feel boy cried wolf a little bit here. But if this happens, I don't think it's going to happen this year. But if she's kind of laying the groundwork for this happening next year, I think all bets are off. I think we're in a totally different paradigm, a new ballpark. Things are going to be completely different. And it really goes into kind of the whole game theory that we've been seeing all year long, that just the US announcing they wanted their intent to buy Bitcoin has fundamentally shifted basically the nation state game theory around Bitcoin. Now, if this finally follows through, if we finally see some action, finally see some buys instead of just rhetoric, then I think all bets are off, and we're all going to be looking back at 2025 and not necessarily feel so bad about the price happening. We're going to feel bad that we didn't buy more because we were expecting it to go higher. So, hey, I don't know. I mean, is this a subtweet of what's going to happen? No idea, but you like to think so. You like to think so.
Let's see. I mean, I think it would be an absolute game changer for the world, right? Again, if you have one of the wealthiest and most powerful country on planet Earth announcing to the world that, hey, look, we are buying Bitcoin. Again, my theory, Anthony Pompliano's theory, when he went on, I think it was one of the legacy media channels. He's like, look, they're buying Bitcoin. Of course, you have David Sachs, who's in the White House, the AI and crypto czar. He's been guiding the Trump administration. I think he's been doing a great job on that front. So I think it's just a matter of time. And then we went through the poly market odds the other day, and they shot up from I think it was 30% to 60 or 70% overnight regarding a potential strategic Bitcoin reserve before the year 2027, Opti. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that I would be surprised if the United States didn't have a strategic Bitcoin reserve by the end of Trump's term. I'd be very surprised. I would be very surprised. I don't know. I want to get your thoughts on this, Opti.
Yeah, well, someone just kind of reminded me. I almost completely blanked on this, but Texas did just announce their strategic Bitcoin reserve. So
I love Texas.
I mean, I'm kind of mad you moved me out of Texas now, but I do love Texas. So there is that kind of competition from the state to federal level going on. I mean, I don't know. Look, we might be reading into things here, but it does sound like Senator Lummis is saying exactly that.
Speaking of Texas, ladies and gentlemen, we got a special guest joining us on the show today. We got Bulldog Holmes, aka Frank Holmes, executive chairman of Hive Digital Technologies. We're going to bring him up on the show. Frank, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with y'all.
Frank, I think we saw each other a couple weeks ago.
In Texas.
In Texas, the great state of Texas. So, Frank, Hive has been absolutely crushing it this year with its dual engine, the velocity at which you guys are deploying hash rate all across the world. I got a front row seat at seeing this, and it was absolutely fascinating. I don't think I've told you guys the story on the show before, but now that Frank is here, we were very, very lucky enough to be able to fly to Paraguay and see one of Hive's mining facilities, and it was one day to the other that they would literally, one day the road wasn't there, and the next day we would wake up and there would be a full paved road. The rate of which these mining sites were being built out was absolutely incredible. And I'll drop some stats for you guys. In the month of October alone, the hash rate is at 21.9 exahashes, and the amount of Bitcoin mined in October is 289 Bitcoin. Frank Holmes, welcome to the show.
Great to be with y'all just before ho, ho, ho comes along.
Yeah. Christmas is right around Christmas is right around the corner. Frank, so talk to me. What's been as on your mind as of late? I have some special announcements, but I'm saving them.
Well, we're busy, maintaining that 25 exahash, being more than 2% of the global network, managing cold weather hitting Sweden and Quebec. So that Arctic freeze came out of Texas for a couple of days this week. But they're the real important parts as we're very, very focused now, getting ready in position for next year's epic growth in our HPC business. And that's also making new highs, or daily revenues up again. So we're really happy we've got this momentum of the dual engine turbocharged process of Bitcoin scaling, then HPC scaling. Whereas we're seeing some of our peers to get a valuation lift, they're all going, well, we're leaving Bitcoin and we're going all HPC. We're doing both.
Incredible. And that's the dual engine that we're talking about when we reference Hive, right? It's the HPC component of the business and then the mining component of the business. Now, Frank, you guys chose to focus specifically on Paraguay. When we were touring the Itapu Dam, you were throwing so many historical facts at me. I was like writing them down in a journal. Could you tell the audience, the more than 2,000 people watching live between all the platforms, why did you guys focus on Paraguay?
Well, first of all, most important, it had hydro energy for us. And it became extremely, extremely difficult to source any size in energy after Putin invaded Ukraine. Sweden, Finland, Norway, everything became locked down and protective. Quebec came the same way. Ontario, Manitoba, British Columbia, they all became very, very fearful. The only place was really open was Paraguay. And I realized he was a member, the president of the country was a member of YPO, a Young Presidents Organization. And so I reached out and had the opportunity over 18 months ago, flew down there to meet him, what his vision for the country was. He studied in New York, went to University of Columbia, was a rugby player. He's 47 years old, dynamic, doing everything for his economy. And little funny things you learn. Each trip was most fascinating. Last one was they never had income taxes until 2009 after the credit.
Oh, I think we lost Frank. Oh, we're bringing him back on. There we go.
So just think of a nation, a modern day nation, and as they've always been sort of ostracized, the Switzerland of South America, but very, very quiet. They produce feeding 60 million homes basically, and they only have 6 million. So the big business has been exporting food. And I think that they're a country that has this incredible endowed natural resources of a dam that is 5 miles in length. Remember when we were down there, it was 40,000 people working for 14 years, 24/7 to build that. And it just produces more than 10 gigawatts of electricity, 5 for Paraguay, 5 for Brazil. And Paraguay was buying it basically for a penny and selling it to Argentina, and Argentina defaulted and didn't pay. So they owed them $250 million. Milei comes into power, and a year later he gives them 100, but they're now gone from no pay to slow pay. And that really impacts a country that's massive in land size, predominantly rich farmland, that they need this $250 million, a lot of money for them for running their government. And they don't have all these taxes. How they run it is basically an import tax. And I thought that was really fascinating to see how they're embracing, and they have a young president that studied in America, is aligned with America. The country loves America. It's not like Maduro in Venezuela, which is a lockdown. You can't fly over the space. You still have problems now with petrol. You have yesterday the president of Mexico saying that the military is going to protect the cartel. So this is a 180 in Paraguay. So we're thrilled to be there and being part of the cycle that we're seeing in Bitcoin and AI, and a country that is accelerating in its growth, running at 5 to 6% with very little government debt. very, very frugal in how it manages everything, that we're building out substations. We're building out so that they can have the footprint for Bitcoin mining. And you know what's happening today in their embassy? The Secretary of Commerce, the Commerce Department, I believe is U.S. Commerce Department is there. And there's another company that raised $150 million VC to do AI business there. And they have this vision of 300 megawatts and becoming the epicenter for Latin America. I know that it's going to take a lot longer than what they're thinking, but it's important that you have Rubio goes down and he says this is a great place. Now you have the Commerce Department. You're getting VCs going to the country. There was a lot of reluctance of going to Latin America. What the Venezuela has done is sort of creating a stigma for the whole area, one bad apple. And I think that'll get cleaned up here shortly. That'll make South America, and I really think that Trump, not only a big cheerleader for Bitcoin, is recognizing the importance of South America and Central America for America, and not allowing the Chinese to come in and take over all of South America. So we're witnessing a conservative government coming into Bolivia. We're seeing these swings take place as it's all run by narco gangs. Ecuador was just a disaster with narco gangs. And I think that one of the things that's going to happen is that we're going to clean it up. So I remain so bullish on Paraguay and Bitcoin. It's just another one of those pullbacks that you're going to witness. And I saw this happening in the AI, both when we were in.
There we go. Sorry.
When we were in Texas together, the sentiment started picking up. Oh, there's an AI bubble, and the guys are very short NVIDIA, and everything about it is a Ponzi scheme, and channels is shorting strategy. There was this sort of growing sentiment of shorting on the industry, and that'll just be temporary. Supposedly, some of them covered their shorts, and I think that this is just part of this great super cycle we're witnessing, because U.S. debt made an all-time money, basically look at money supply. If you're looking at debt around the world, it's more than 3.5 times the GDP of the world. The world's GDP is doing really well. I have an ETF called C, and it really is the arteries for the movement of all commodities and manufactured goods. 80% of all goods are moved by the sea, and it's doing well even after the tariff war. I mean, it has a setback, and then it's the best time to buy. Bad news is good news to buy, and it's been a true contrarian. So I just think that this is a great setup. Global rates are falling, debts are rising. This is the perfect setup that we're going to have another great year for all alternative assets. And this is Bitcoin, and this is gold, and this is silver. It's to recognize that the supply is much better defined than gold or silver, but gold and silver do have scarcity factors to them. And we're seeing these central banks go to the gold. Well, gold goes up like it's been going more than bullish. You don't have the government to sell their gold to buy Bitcoin. No, it's all about the global debt to GDP because of modern monetary theory. It bodes so well for this asset class.
Frank, you said something and that got me extremely excited. You said super cycle. So this year has been a very unique year in Bitcoin's history, Frank. We had the S&P and both gold have actually outperformed Bitcoin year to date. Frank, you have a very extensive history in the gold industry. What's happening here? What's happening with Bitcoin? Why do you think Bitcoin performed the way it did this year, and it was outperformed by gold?
Well, I think that gold is the big push for gold has been the de-dollarization and the arms race we're experiencing. And there's a real interesting scramble for energy and land for data centers that have their HPC tier 3 and tier 4. There's a big global war going on, but it's not missiles. This is not like Ukraine and Russia. It's an attack of the telecom system, cybersecurity attacks, and you're witnessing that we have to turn around and maintain what we're growing and doing in the data center business. So with that war, you have China weaponizing anti-America dollar. On the other side of that equation is Tether, and Tether is shown in its growth. And Tether has been the growth of emerging markets in Latin, South America, Turkey, Africa, Bulgaria. All these places have US dollars in Tether's stable coin. Tether has recognized that their revenue is going to drop because rates are falling in US dollars. So they're going long gold. They're the biggest buyers of gold. So, okay, that's interesting to me from a crypto space because I'm a money manager and I look for these dynamics. But China is assaulting everywhere with this, what they call they had this, I thought at first, a brilliant decision called One Belt, One Road. And it was for China to and when you look at the data points, it's mind-boggling. There's 194 countries. They've lent $2 trillion to 140 of the countries, but they have clauses with them that you can't trade in US dollars. They're anti-US dollars. And that's affecting central bankers. And they're still behind the curve in Bitcoin as a great sovereign asset. It will happen. Right now, they're scrambling and to own gold as the reserve, not the dollar, because China basically has it as loan covenants.
But but you're making the case that it's just a matter of time before they figure out that Bitcoin is an equivalent or even a better equivalent to gold.
Yeah, it's but the psychologically that we have to remember. In zeros and ones make up the internet, and when it comes to human beings, the tangibility of an alternative asset is very, very important to a big part of the population, and the digital world doesn't care. And that is a newer part of the digital world. They're the same kids that NVIDIA built their chips around for gaming. And then went from playing games as kids going on to become coders and really launch Satoshi and this whole group. They're all gamers, and they're the ones that really have pushed us forward. So they will embrace digital money much faster. So you can see the next 20 years this transition taking place. A lot of young speculators want it to happen overnight. It's not going to happen overnight. But what is going to happen overnight is more money printing. And they're going to print money faster than the governments are growing their economies. And therefore, they're going to have currency devaluations. It's all a race to zero. The American dollar will be very slow. And the slowest is probably be the Swiss franc. The other ones will fall more quickly. The hedge against that purchasing power is definitely Bitcoin. And the other part is silver and gold. Look at pennies. Copper pennies are gone now. This is the last production of pennies. When during COVID, Nike stores said they ran out of, everyone started hoarding pennies, nickels and quarters and dimes. Now we're going to turn around and see, and those pennies today don't even have a penny of copper. They're going to stop making them, but they're going to become scarcity, a collector's item. I collected thousands of pennies that were 1963, 64 because they had 5 cents worth of copper in them, and I bought them for a penny. And I think they go to 25 cents and I bought silver under $5. I give them out to all my employee a silver coin every year. Well, it hits $50. I bought under $5. I bought thousands of silver coins because I believe in that scarcity element. Bitcoin is even more dynamic because there's capped at 21 million coins. And my wealth is going to turn over to young guys like you, and the wealth generation to my family. They're younger. And that world embraces the digital realm much faster and easier. So Bitcoin will continue to have more volatility, but run. But we have to come back and look at the past 2 months. What happened? Well, we did see this lead up in China. China turned around. Hong Kong opens up for Bitcoin exchange, and China uses its hammer to stop it. It has this sort of negative impact on it. And that war is really against China. That's the real attack. And we just have to go and educate other countries on the Genius Act, why stable coins are important. And so is paper money is important because the tangibility of that cash is still important. Countries like Nigeria try to go to 100% to stable, and it was a disaster for them. You need to have both running in an economic engine, and US dollars are not going to go out of fashion. So I remain really bullish on this Bitcoin, and I think you buy the dip. And the last thing I want to share with you guys, for your listeners, Bitcoin is so significant, Bitcoin miners, because they're the ones that are so scrappy. They are the ones that are very frugal, that went out to West Texas where there was surplus energy, but flare gas and solar and wind. There was electricity that was, as times, was making the cost of energy decline. And it's really fascinating that it was so cheap a couple years ago in Houston and other places because of all this built up. Well, they went out there and they found a home for it, and they enriched the community. CleanSpark has talked about where in so many communities they created a tax base because they had surplus stranded electricity, and they started Bitcoin mining. What are we doing in Paraguay? We're building out the grid. We're going to be now building out a 300 substation for megawatts of electricity, and then that'll be 600 megawatts we're going to have. So we are part of the build out. The HPC race is going to go after the Bitcoin miners' assets, who already locked up the energy, locked up the stranded energy. And I think that's what, there's a long runway for Hive in countries like Paraguay, whereas in the US, it will continue. And I think that some of these companies are going to get out of their Bitcoin mining and go all to high performance computing, which is okay. That means they'll leave and I'll get a bigger part of the.
I love Frank. The HPC people will leave and you'll get a bigger piece of the pie. That's what I was hearing.
The Bitcoin pie. The Bitcoin pie.
The Bitcoin pie. Frank, I got some news. I got some breaking news. This is some big breaking news. And I want you to talk about it. I want to get your thoughts on this. Hive to be the first Bitcoin and AI company listed in the Colombian Stock Exchange. Big breaking news. Air horns. Frank Holmes, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. You know, if you look at emerging market investing, and I'm the chief investment officer of US Global Investor, and every day we talk about global markets and compare emerging to developed markets. And you can see that this year, with all the negative news, Latin America stocks have far outperformed the S&P 500. Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they've outperformed. And Latin America is booming in many different divisions of that. And Milei's done a great job of repositioning Argentina. We are seeing governments all of a sudden leave the far communist left and going to conservatives. Not, and I mean, because financial, I like to call them in America, financial fiscal conservative Democrats. They're Democrats, but they're really fiscally, financially conservative. and that is the voters are voting those people in. Venezuela is going to be contained. Maduro is going to be taken out, and he's going to be going to the Crowbar Hotel prison, and so we'll get that stability. And I think the vision for Latin America is huge. So what we've witnessed from our ETFs that are listed there, that there are like Robinhood apps. You can trade stocks, but they can only trade Latin American stocks. And they can't buy Hive unless they can find a broker like Interactive Brokers that'll open an account. And there's all these young people. We get them off our ETFs. Sometimes it'll shock you. 500 kids come on a program like this, listening to learn about trading our GoAU gold ETF that's listed in Bogota. And we have JETS listed there. So there's this interest. And Hive will be the first to be listed. And where's our big Bitcoin growth? Latin America. And will be that, hopefully that they'll be their proxy to go, if they can't buy Bitcoin or they're reluctant to buy, they don't feel for the exchange, they'll be able to use these apps. Like there's an app called Happy, HPI. And that is something that they easily trade our ETFs, but they'll be able to go and trade Hive. With that, we'll get listed in Peru, Paraguay, we'll get listed in San Diego. And I think it's important to recognize then it'll be Mexico City. That's sort of the journey that we really help young investors that want to play in Bitcoin mining. They can participate with Hive.
Frank, I love what we were talking about and first of all, that's fantastic news. Again, starting in Colombia and then going across the continent. And I think, what a lot of people have to understand, speaking as, a first generation person that came from Latin America, my parents did. But again, the opportunities that we take for granted here in the West are not there. Right. So you don't have the privilege of being able to access the global financial markets. Right. You can't just open a Robinhood account if you live in some of these countries in Latin America. It's not that easy. Right. So the fact that you guys are making, really making the effort to get listed on the Colombian Stock Exchange with the long-term goal of getting listed on all these stock exchanges in multiple different countries in Latin America, I think brings a tremendous opportunity for young investors that do want to get exposure to one of the fastest growing Bitcoin mining companies that isn't fully pivoting to AI. You guys are sticking to your dual engine. Now, Frank, one of the fascinating conversations that I had with you, I was super, super lucky to have a fireside chat with you at Mining Disrupt in Dallas, Texas. And the way that you broke it down for me was that Bitcoin miners served as the pioneers for the HPC, the AI revolution, right? They built out the infrastructure beforehand, and now the AI guys are coming in and they're taking advantage of that infrastructure. And the way that you broke it down on stage was fascinating. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, if you go what's called basically a green field, and you want to develop that, and you source the energy and you bought the land, the permitting process, depending on what state you're in or what province you're in Canada, it can take 3 to 5 years for a big mega 20, 30 megawatt project. It just, the ESG component of environmental is so significant, like the state of New York. Or if you go to the provinces of Ontario and Manitoba. So that journey gets shortened. The life cycle from path to cash flow, from building a tier 1 to tier 3 data center is just take a tier 1 data center and you've got the electricity, you have the land. Now you have to spend a lot of money upgrading the structure of your building and much more air conditioning. You have to trade these tier 3, tier 4 data centers. They have bigger pipes for electricity because you build a brain, and you need, for every 10 megawatts, you're only going to get about 6 that'll really be HPC. The other 4 is using electricity for air conditioning. And you have to have 2 different sources of internet. You have to have a backup source of energy if the electricity grid goes down. So you have to go and build something's diesel or natural gas. And then you also need to have batteries inside. You need all this backup so that the HPC never goes down for long. It's seconds. And that is the big difference between Bitcoin mining. We can go down and we can balance the grid and come back up. As though the energy is cheap, we can go half a day and mine Bitcoin. If it's cheap enough, you cannot do that with high performance computing. So that's a very big difference. And what you're seeing with the HPC, they're looking at these companies that have energy contracts, have the land, have all that cement infrastructure. When you go to try to lay some thick cement in North Dakota, anywhere in Canada and Sweden, you only have a shorter number of months a year because it's friggin' cold. It's freezing. And so you have to lay the cement, and that's another delay of moving and building. But if you already had that cement laid and you have the power coming in, wow, you got the infrastructure, you start building from inside, and you build a tier 3 data center, and you go from 3 years to 9 months.
Wow. Do you think, and Frank, do you think, and I asked you this in Texas, do you think, no, and perhaps this was actually behind the scenes where I asked you this, do you think that the China mining ban was a blessing in disguise for the American mining industry and the American AI industry?
Well, I think it was more so from a blessing for people to be able to buy. What's really interesting to me is how the difficulty has gone up, and the new really energy efficient chips, they're just coming out next year. When we were talking about we'll go from 17 to 12 joules on average, and our goal is to get it down to under 8 joules for the next halving. And that will allow us, based on our cost of energy, to still make money. And I was surprised that the difficulty continued to rise. What that tells me is that there's many countries that are desperate to get Bitcoin. Russia is mining, bad guys, but they need US dollars. It's just evident. We saw in Iran when the B-2 bombers dropped bombs and disrupted all their grid, the difficulty fell dramatically. And then it slowly started climbing back. And that's probably one of the fastest things that came back because they need US dollars. And I think that's a really interesting dynamic. But I think that it's a bit of a wake up call for that China is still the big bear that's out there to try to assault this industry. And just as much as America is very deeply concerned, and so is Europe now and Canada regarding this creeping China red bear, we have to be cognizant of it. And so we have to prepare another agenda of how we don't go to war. We don't start throwing missiles at each other, but it's a very strong chessboard you have to be blocking. And as long as we maintain our advantages with AI and the growth of AI, then we can keep them at bay. I just came back last week, spent Turkey weekend in Japan. I took my wife and daughter, had never been, and we went to Tokyo and then to Kyoto. Well, for me taking them, I've been many times, it was a cultural experience. My first time in 91, all the signs were only Japanese. Now they are Japanese and English. But they are very concerned about the Chinese, and they have now the first new prime minister is a woman, and she's very tough about protecting the Japanese culture. And they had this special visa that the Chinese government was paying for Chinese people basically to go there, and they realized it was hurting their culture, and which really I found so amazing. Well, what does she say to China? if you attack Taiwan, you're going to have to deal with us.
Yeah.
And they have kicked China's butt, and they at one time had all of Korea and going up to Russia, that whole region of the Manchuria, that they were easy to conquer that. And if you look at, we're so lovely to see the robotics by Elon Musk. Well, who's also way advanced in robotics are the Japanese, especially for caring for the elderly people, is where they've really made these big advancements. And people that have illnesses, well, they're mobilizing. And what happens when Toyota all of a sudden says they're going to start making mass weapons, and they can turn on a dime? So I think that's a great part of playing this chessboard that slows down China's aggressiveness under Xi Jinping. And he can go keep buying the gold because they have to print a lot of money. If you look at the debt from all their provinces and add it on with their federal debt, they're much more debt overall than America. But America gets banged around all the time with having the most debt per GDP. It's just not true. It's much less than the world as a global GDP and the debt levels. Well, MMT is not going to go away. But what we are seeing is that the spending is getting away from social stuff, agenda from socialism's policies. They're for national security. They are for better borders. They are for a better cybersecurity. That's what they need the AI for. So if you go to autonomous weapons, you go to autonomous cars, you want all those gadgets, you want those robots that are going to be washing your clothes. There's a good showing that that's a big push now to be able to buy these robots coming out next year for those mundane jobs. Well, you need these data centers, and America has over 1,000 HPC data centers. That's double what China is. But China has more energy. They spent more money building hydro dams. So, and they now have to run the push to build these data centers, but they don't get the NVIDIA chips. That's why they were blocked. So they can't stack them. So America can try to catch up. So we have an arms race for data centers for HPC. What I am witnessing is not just America. When we look at the chips that NVIDIA sells their chips, say 50% go to America, 2% go to Canada. Well, Canada should be at basically 5%, always 1/10 of America, population-wise, economics, education, all those factors so aligned. They have to double. Europe, they're even less. They're only 10% of the chips are going there. Well, what's going to drive them, those economies? NATO, the spending. Trump warned them. And then all of a sudden, the spending's up to 2%. What happened to the military stocks in Europe? They went up 100% this year. 100%.
That's crazy.
And now Trump has said 5%. So what happens when they go to 5%? The military and of all these governments need the data centers from hackers that are coming in and hacking and shutting down the Jaguar manufacturing company, shutting down the Heathrow airport for the weekend. So we're going to witness the big growth in data centers, and we're going to witness that Bitcoin mining companies are going to all of a sudden get recognized for the value of these data centers. So what do I mean by that? If you look at CoreWeave, when you look at any other just digital realty, these puppies trade at 15 to 20 times revenue per share. They trade at 24 times EBITDA. So if you said, okay, what is Hive's EBITDA? Our EBITDA is going to be over $100 million. Well, therefore, we should be trading over $2 billion. Therefore, our stock should be at $10 right now. And I believe that's the great mean reversion for all the Bitcoin miners, that the value of a data center will go up.
Incredible. And Frank, also too, these data centers, they're energy hungry. How is the world prepared from an energy perspective to feed these data centers, which are going to require a tremendous amount of electricity?
Well, clearly not in Europe. They're going to have to get with the new ingenuity that's happening here with nuclear. They're going to have to go back and find go nuclear to get caught up. They're totally stressed out with their policies, but they're going to do it, and they're going to create a military-industrial complex. They're going to come out like the University of Texas here in San Antonio is the #1 cybersecurity school in the country. It used to have started division 25 years ago with 100 students, and now it has 10,000. The NSA has the second largest office in San Antonio, 3,000 employees, handsomely paid, and building a huge 3 million square foot data center complex here. We're going to see that in Europe. We're going to see that continue, and I remain for that where the value of these data centers. With that spending coming back to that thought process, modern monetary theory is not going away. That means Bitcoin will trade higher. And the first big run is central banks buying the gold. It's the central banks that are really caught up at buying the gold in the battle against the dollar. They'll run out of that, and all of a sudden, those gold investors will say, and central bankers, we better get another liquid alternative asset. We got to go long Bitcoin. That's what's going to. That's sort of I look at it as the DNA, the helix, how the helix crosses over, cosine sine wave, and it turns. That's what I witnessed between the two assets. Not one against the other. One pulls out, then they pull back. One pulls out, then they pull back.
I'm so excited for when that moment happens. I agree with you, by the way, Frank. I think they go hand in hand. And I think it's just a matter of time before the world realizes the absolute scarcity that Bitcoin has. Frank, Hive is dropping a short film coming up at 2:30. We have a special 1-minute little tidbit that you guys are going to see. Frank was talking a lot about their operation in Paraguay, and Frank came on the show multiple times before I went to go visit Paraguay to see this. And there is no amount of words or pictures that we can show you guys for you guys to understand the scale of the Itapu Dam, which is powering the Hive Paraguay mining facilities and sites. And we were able to capture some of this so that you guys could understand what is happening in Paraguay, what Hive is doing in Paraguay. And we got a special 1-minute sneak peek into the short film that's coming up. That's going to be releasing at 2:30. Find it on the Hive YouTube channel. Find it on the X channel. You can find it on Rumble as well. And of course, Frank, Iden, and a lot of the Hive team are featured in it. It was an amazing experience to witness.
You guys had to get up at 4 a.m. to catch the sunrise coming up. I mean,
yes.
I thought the footage you guys did was stunning. It was like the movie The Mission. And like that is another fantastic movie to see the falls. I haven't seen any video film until what you guys produced. That's like the equivalent to The Mission, which is one of those movies the Vatican approves. So it gets the blessing.
Thank you, Frank. And we're going to be playing you guys a clip of the film in just a little bit. Opti, could you? Here we go. There we go. We're going to be playing you guys a clip of the film. And again, the full film gets released at 2:30. Let's check it out.
Cuando hablamos de Itaipú, hablamos de energía limpia. Itaipú tiene una capacidad máxima de 14.000 megavatios y de los cuales hoy día Hive está usando 50% de una de las turbinas.
It took 14 years to build. It took 40,000 workers to build 10 gigawatts of harnessing water to make electricity.
It's the largest hydro dam by production in the world.
It's physics and engineering, but there's almost like a philosophical thread to it all. We're using hydroelectricity, the water that flows through this hydroelectric dam that then gets distributed to the substation and powers our miners and it's water cooled through hydro cooling infrastructure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the full film, catch it at 2:30. Follow the Hive X account, the Hive YouTube account. I do want to thank Hive's executive chairman, Frank Holmes. Frank, thank you so much for joining us on today's Simply Bitcoin Live.
Thank you. Thank you. Look up.
Appreciate it, guys. All right, guys, if you guys enjoyed the show, you know what to do. Smash the like button, consider subscribing, all of that good stuff, and we'll see you guys tomorrow for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. Take care, everybody.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.